Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our regular family of seekers, and we're reading through the Bhagavad Gita, verse by verse. We're kind of diving in to the meaning of each verse and its relevance to our lives. And we're getting through chapter 6 right now. We've been at this for a year. We started August 2024. So we've been at this for almost a year, and we're almost through chapter 6. We have a little bit left. Today we're going to be doing 3 verses. If we get through them, we'll go through 3 verses. And we've been talking a lot about the mind and a lot about how the mind is different from us. Oftentimes we overly identify with the mind. And in that, we have a tendency to just kind of follow whatever the mind's desire or whim is at that time. And this Ashtanga yoga practice teaches us that the mind is different than us and that we don't always have to blindly listen to the mind. And when we can start to get control over the mind is when we can start to really experience peace. And in that peace, deep spiritual connection. So that's where all of this is going. Controlling the mind is great in our material lives. We see so many benefits. If we can stop listening to our mind all the time, so many benefits. But ultimately, it's going to this place where it offers control of the mind offers the most connection with divinity. Because until we can quiet those voices in our mind, until we can still that madness, we can't be peaceful enough to really sincerely connect. And that's what we're doing here. So with that, we are going to start with text 27 today, 627. And Stella, whenever you're ready, if you want to read that for us.
Okay. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds.
Thank you. Okay, so just like we were just talking about, we all long for peace of mind, for the mind to be peaceful. And sometimes we forget that this peace, it doesn't oftentimes come automatically. It comes after a battle. Our mind, it's restless because it's filled with all these agitating emotions, lust, anger, greed, all these material emotions. And they act like enemies within us. They disturb our inner world. And to find that real peace that we all crave, we have to confront them. We have to subdue them. And this not like a violent thing, but it's like consistent, firmly and consistently. We have to say no to the impulses that come up when we want to act out of lust or anger or greed. And every time that we say no, they lose a little of their power. And this is how we start to calm the mind down. We've talked about this quite a bit in this chapter. This is the process of which we start to calm the mind. We start to notice, we start to observe, we start to say no. And over time, that gets loud enough that the mind quiets. And this is why we talk about the modes too. We talk about the modes of material nature. They help us to kind of identify where we're at, where our body's at, where our mind's at. And we know that we have to go up to that mode of goodness. We have to go from ignorance to passion to goodness. And goodness is the mode of contentment, when we're reflective, when we're contemplative, when we're making decisions, that are thought through, that we're peaceful. That mode of goodness, that's like the launching pad to like the transcendental realm. And so it's good to kind of know these modes and the differences between the modes, because in that we can kind of see where we are and where we need to go so that we can ultimately, get to that transcendental realm. And that mode of contentment is like the launching pad for that. So as the mind becomes peaceful, as we combat all these modes of material nature and we get to that peaceful state, this is the place that the yogi naturally can turn inwards. It's like they've quieted the mind such that it's not pulling them every which direction. It's not just completely distracting them. It's quiet, it's peaceful. And in that they can turn inwards. And in that turning inwards, they can experience that true happiness. And this isn't the kind of fleeting happiness from external things that we've all experienced, like you get a new car, you're super happy. A little while later, it's like it's old, it's stale, you don't really care anymore, or whatever it is that is like that gives you happiness in the moment, but due to the nature of temporary material existence, it's going to kind of fade. No, this happiness that we're talking about that the yogi gets from turning inwards and connecting with divinity, this is a deep, stable joy, right? Imagine that. We really can't even relate to it in this material existence. Think about something that's given you joy, like long term, that doesn't go away. But this is like even more stable and even deeper than that. And this is the happiness that we get from going within. This is that brahma-bhuta stage, the spiritual platform where one just experiences unity with divinity, right? And therefore it's free from even the burdens of their past karma. They've got out of this material cycle of birth and death, this out of this material realm, and they're at the transcendental level. Right? Because our consciousness is naturally expansive, right? It has that potential to connect with higher reality. But what happens is the mind gets filled with this material contamination, this lust, this anger, this greed, thinking that this will make me happy, these impurities, this contamination. Contamination because it's not pure, right? Our pure state is part of God, right? But we get contaminated in this kind of illusory energy. And the consciousness becomes constrained. It's like a clogged hose. I don't know if I started a garden this year, and I water my garden when it doesn't rain, and I have to kind of like pull it around the side of the house, and there's always like a tweak in it, and it's like the water doesn't come out, and usually I have like my baby strapped to me, and I'm trying to like work with the hose, it's like to get the kink out so that the water can go freely. And this is what happens to our consciousness. Like it gets clogged, it gets constrained, it gets pinched with this material energy, such that the flow of spiritual consciousness can't quite get out. Like it only trickles. We know how frustrating that is. It's like the worst. There's a little kink in it, and it's just trickling. But that's what's happening to our spiritual energy because our consciousness it's clogged. It's going through this hose. It's clogged with all this contaminants. We're so full of desire and passion that our consciousness gets stuck. It gets stuck in this material realm. Just like we see someone that's attractive and we're filled with like lust. We see, and in that way, like we're only seeing their body. We're not seeing their soul. We're dealing with them on the bodily level. We're not acknowledging their divinity. We don't even see it. And that's because our vision is contaminated, and that contamination distorts our perception. And this is the nature of material world. This is what we're dealing with. We have a material body, we have a material mind, and this is the filter of which we're going to experience life. But there's hope for us. There's hope for us because we can engage in these spiritual practices. We can connect with divinity, and we can little by little purify ourselves. We walk around and our mind, it's like constantly nagging us for one thing. It wants one thing after another. And that's the way that our culture is built. It just our culture just amplifies what the mind already does. It's bombarding us nonstop with these promises of pleasure, success, fulfillment through external things. Right? Because the culture, it's just a mirror of our collective mind. That's all that culture is. And then what people think, desire, believe, it shows up in their actions and their environments. And over time, it just blends together in what we call culture, right? But the problem is that most people today have very little understanding of their true spiritual identity or their purpose, right? They're just going through day by day, trying to get through whatever makes them happy, whatever makes them the least uncomfortable, right? Not really thinking about their true identity or their purpose. Right? And therefore they just kind of go, it's just natural just to go along with whatever the mind suggests. In the moment, that seems like the path of least resistance. Just whatever the mind wants, it's just like a child, like a lazy parent who just gives their child candy because they keep asking. Whatever will shut the kid up, right? I'll just keep doing it. But what happens is a kid becomes a brat, right? Anybody ever know a kid like that who has parents who just give them whatever they want? And it's like they're terrible to be around. They're just like the brattiest, most entitled kids. And that's what happens to our mind when we just constantly feed it, whatever it's telling us, right? We become so far away from our real spiritual identity. We become so contaminated, so confused with who we are and what we're doing here. Right? And that's what happens, and our culture reflects that, right? It just becomes a super materialistic culture, and it just keeps feeding the same cycle. Right? But again, good news for us, we can protect ourselves from getting swept away in this, right? We can step back. We can take a break from the constant noise of the mind. Sometimes a parent needs a break from the constant mom, 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 right? You can take a break. And one of the best ways to do this is by immersing ourselves in spiritual wisdom, right? Like the teachings of the Gita. And when we connect with that truth, even for just a few moments, it gives us space to breathe. Right? It helps us see clearly where real happiness actually lies. And when we nourish ourselves in this way, both with wisdom and devotional experiences, our conviction naturally grows. Devotional experiences, we go to a kirtan, maybe we go to a festival. How fun are those things? Right? They make you feel uplifted, they make you feel connected, they put you on some kind of like high, right? And we start to feel the truth, right? The lasting happiness is not found in material things. It's found in devotion. And once this conviction takes root, it becomes easier to calm the mind, right? To redirect it, even to transform it. And that's the power of a steady spiritual practice. And it purifies the mind of restless passion. And it gives us peace. And it gradually reorientates our whole consciousness towards what's real and what's lasting. And so we work it from both sides. We pull that restless mind in because we know that true happiness does not lie external, right? So we pull it in, but at the same time, we uplift it, we engage it in devotional practices, right? Things that bring happiness to our soul, right? So we're still feeding it. We're not starving. We're not starving ourselves. But we're nourishing ourselves on a much deeper level, right? It's like health food. Health food instead of junk food. That's what we're doing for our consciousness. Right? When we choose devotional activities over a quick fix to relieve some temporary discomfort, like a Netflix show, right? To just kind of forget about the day and just zone out. No, we don't need to zone out. We don't need to escape anything. We don't have to do that. No, we can connect with something higher. Right? We can connect with something higher. And in that, we're nourished. I just saw that Shakti Devi Dasi just joined us. I love that you use your new name. Welcome. Beautiful name. It looks so beautiful written out like that. Welcome. The other thing is that our mind, as again, we're in this material existence, we're moving around, bumping into each other, and our mind is full of impurities. right? And so much so that the mind, we don't even realize it. Like an alcoholic who believes that alcohol is their greatest source of pleasure, even though it's actually causing immense suffering. Okay, we can look at that and we can see the irony in that. Like that alcoholic just doesn't get it. They think this is bringing them pleasure, but I can see how it's affecting their lives, and it's bringing them so much suffering. And we can look at that, and we can feel so like, yeah, we get it, I get it, but they don't get it, right? But we don't see that we're doing that same thing. Maybe on a smaller, less obvious scale, but we do the same thing when we act out of lust or greed or anger, right? Thinking that that's going to bring us happiness, right? But at best, it's not going to satisfy us. At worst, it's going to bring us more suffering, like that alcoholic, right? Like when we work our whole lives so that we can get a nicer car, a nicer house. We can just keep upgrading our status, right? And we're stuck in that and we're just chasing it. We're working so hard and we think that's going to bring us happiness. But at the end of the day, it's not, right? But it's so hard to get out of some of those loops, those things that we're convinced. If I just got a little bit more honor, a little bit more respect, a better position, it's going to bring me happiness. But the reality is it won't. And oftentimes those things just bring us more suffering, right? They make us more attached. They make us more situated in our ego. Right? And we know what happens when we become attached and situated in our ego, right? If we're attached, things are going to be taken away from us because everything's temporary. Right? And if we have this me mentality, where it's inhibiting connection, right? To ourselves, to others, and ultimately to God. And the soul, it's pure, it's spiritual. It wants to connect with God. And when we get obsessed with temporary worldly things, this is just a symptom of our impurity, right? These impurities that we talked about, like that hose that gets kinked, that they block us from that unlimited joy of absorption in God, right? And they pull us towards these petty pursuits that offer only this flicker of enjoyment. And many of us have experienced this so much in our lives, right? With something we've pursued, a desire or a habit that promises happiness, right? Our mind promises that it'll make us happy, or the culture around us promises that it'll make us happy, right? Or that it'll make you worthy. But it often leaves us feeling empty or distracted or entangled. Right? Anybody have an experience like that? Something in their lives, maybe current or in the past, that their mind or culture has promised would make them happy, but really has just left them empty or distracted or entangled. Anybody? Shakti? Can I call you Shakti? Is Shakti okay? Such a great name for you. Oh, you're on mute.
There I am, trying to work this. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really speaking to my heart right now just by saying that. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate it and grateful that I just want to, can I make a quick comment? Is that sometimes the person that you think should be a guru is not the right person for you. So there's a lot of really good gurus out there. Take your time and just see who fits right.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, what you're saying is so very true. Like I often thought that, once I buy a house, then I'm going to be happy. I'm going to have, some money in the bank. I'm going to feel settled. I'm not going to feel like I'm paycheck to paycheck. Then I'm going to be happy. Like these are for me, it all revolved around financial things. Not really so much like if I get a Mercedes. That was not my thing, but it was more financial stability. When I have financial stability, then I'll be a better person. I won't be so stressful. I won't be so stressed out. Life will be easier. And it's like what? Like the reality is my soul can leave my body in about an hour. So my financial security right out the window. You know what I mean? So I started looking at my life in a different way. And when I came to Krishna and I realized like in that moment, every single moment that I'm thinking of Krishna and behaving in a way around Krishna and the way I've been I read in the scriptures, all of those moments make me happy. Those moments fill that God hole, not my financial stability. So
Yeah.
that was my thing.
So nice. Thanks for sharing. The other, did you experience with financial stability too that like as soon as your circumstance gets a little bit better, then you're just like wanting the next higher
Yep.
level of stability. It's like you never have enough financial stability.
I call that leveling up.
Yeah.
Every time you
Yeah.
get someplace, you're like, oh, we're gonna level up. Okay, I have a house. It's $500,000. All right, let's level up. Let's buy a house for $800,000. Okay,
Yeah.
now we're good. Let's level up. Let's buy a house for $1 million. Right? Like so, you just keep leveling up, and then you live beyond your means anyway.
Yes, that's exact. Yeah, totally. That's a trick of the mind. That's a
Right.
trick
That's
of
the
the
Maya.
mind. Yeah. I heard a nice definition of Krishna consciousness this morning. It was my I was just listening to a class from my guru, and he said Krishna consciousness is living in harmony with God and one and a process that helps you serve and love God. You know, process that helps you understand how to live in harmony with God and how to serve and love God. And and that's what we're doing here. You know, it's not sectarian, it's not but it's what brings true fulfillment and happiness to the soul, to the self, more than anything else in this material existence. You know, everything else in this material existence is illusion. I mean, it brings it just can't do that. And I heard a nice definition of Maya too from him, I think in the same class. He said, Maya, it's not bad. You know, Maya is our friend, but it's what separates the sincere from the insincere. I liked this definition too. You know, we need that. You know, you have to separate the sincere from the insincere to protect Krishna's abode. But thank you. Thank you for sharing, Stacy. Or Shakti. I love that name for you. Anybody else before we move on? Stella.
Um, yeah, I thought of it too, especially for women. If you're thin, you'll be happy. And we tell girls that from very, very young, and they end up disordered eating or hungry all the time, and they're suffering and suffering for this ideal, which their body chemistry, genetics might not really be able to give them, even with, and you achieve thinness, say, and but you're still you. And now you're getting all this unwanted attention from men. Like you didn't realize you want that. You thought you wanted that attention. And then suddenly that attention is like, back off, like, especially as a young woman, And it's not, I mean, thinness in our culture is told to women to be, if you are thin, you will be happy.
Hmm.
When what it takes to be thin makes you miserable.
Hmm.
And to maintain the thinness is miserable, for some, depending on genetics. But and it's not, you're still you. You're still it's just the body.
Yeah.
I don't know, not everybody can relate to that, but some of us who have struggled with diet culture telling us we will be happy and we're not.
To-
Stella,
totally. Oh.
may I
Yes.
may I open my vault of I'm never ever going to share this with anybody
Oh,
to
please
my
honor us.
so that was mine
Yeah.
and I was anorexic and bulimic, 15, 16, finding like I knew every bathroom on the route to the place so that I could throw up
Yes.
if I ate anything, counting calories, filling my days with numbers. Okay, I had this many calories. I'm going to put spray butter instead of real butter, instead of a something oil on my bread because spray butter doesn't have any calories. And like even my family would be like, "Did you bring your spray butter?" And I would bring it out to dinner. I was so caught up in the insanity of this body. And I think
For
partly
what
also,
ideal? And that was the
yeah,
thing, for what ideal? And the ideal in disordered eating is never achieved. The same way you never achieve your full wealth where you're satisfied, you're never thin enough, and so till, you know, and that's the fallacy. The ideal itself is disordered,
yeah, no,
and
100%.
I get it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't make you have until I was in like 22. I just said, you know what? I need to see somebody, and I need to
Yeah.
get rid of all the things that my parents told me I should
Yes.
be and do, and learn how to be a good person and let go of all
Yeah.
that.
Not just what you look like. Yeah, I think a lot of women have done this. Thank you for sharing, because this is a very common thing.
And
And I think Krishna consciousness can really help us in this
yeah,
so
and quite
much.
frankly, it's done the opposite. So I I was in Maya in my mind, feeling this 20 like almost all the time, up at 2 in the morning doing setups in my bedroom. Then the people that I wanted to be friends with didn't didn't want to be friends with me because they thought, well, she looks so perfect. She's trying to look so perfect. So like it literally backfired, all of it. Like the whole book backfired on me, and then I was left with, what do I do now?
Classic Maya, classic material world. Classic. Right.
So I found Krishna, and
Thank
that's what
God.
helped
Thank
me. I
God.
know.
Thank God.
Thank you,
I'm so
Krishna.
glad. Yeah.
Thank you,
Krishna is
Stella.
the best. Thank you, Shakti. Hare Krishna.
And Krishna.
Oh, so nice. Thank you. Thank you both. I related with everything you both were saying too. I think my whole 20s was spent thinking my value was directly related to the number on the scale. Just so ridiculous. Thank you. Thank you both. And Katie.
Hey, Hare Krishna. Um, yeah, I was thinking how, especially when I was growing up and in school, and then of course it just like keeps like, going in some degree, that actually what was kind of like encouraged and overdone was this like overuse of the mind. Like oh, you are smart, like go ahead, try to do everything. And it was very overwhelming and very stressful, and would cause a lot of like lack of sleep because of too much, like too many AP classes, like too many, and not to the amount I could really handle. um and I think it also led me to kind of over think, to over celebrate, like analyzing and overthinking. And it has supported my mind being like overactive and over busy. And yeah, so that was kind of interesting to think about. And this might sound a little like out of time, but I remember a few years ago, especially like at the museum where there's a lot of like unique minds and personalities. And we kind of joke like, oh, yeah, in the 80s, it wasn't as much about ADD or ADHD. They just called us gifted and talented and just like overwhelmed us with options. Take up all our mind time. Anyway, but then it kind of links in because I was wanting to share that yesterday, I've had some time to do more rounds than I usually do since I've been home. And I was kind of, I guess, thinking like, oh man, it's nice to do extra rounds, but like, my mind is wandering and I'm thinking about a lot of stuff. And then all of a sudden, Krishna like blessed me with this thought that was like, most of your thoughts are not useful and unnecessary. And it was so like freeing. And then it was like, reframe it as like, how is this helping me serve? Is this helping your pleasure, Krishna? Like, yeah, and that was just a neat moment yesterday. And it's funny because I feel like it's been nice to kind of focus on the mind these last weeks, in this chapter. Useful. And then in the next moment, I also thought like, and this doesn't really relate so much to this, but just to share it anyway, is, how can I have or like keep hate in my heart when like that's where Krishna is. So that was really useful. So thank you.
Wow. Wow. Such beautiful realizations. Thank you for sharing, Katie. Yeah, I love that example too. It's like the mind is in such the mode of passion. Our culture is in such the mode of passion that it's like normalized. And we don't even realize it, but it's like, yeah, we are just overstimulated, over busy. Our schedules are over full. It's like, when are we gonna have time to be peaceful, to reflect, to be introspective, to allow space for what is. And we think it's normal. That's the crazy thing too. We're so like normalized to culture that if you're not busy, if your schedule isn't jam-packed, something's wrong with you. You're missing out, FOMO. So crazy. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That was a great one. And the next realization was beautiful too. And that actually goes in nicely with the text 29 that we'll do. We'll talk a little bit about super soul, God in the heart. And yeah, so thank you. Thanks for sharing. So yes, scriptures help us understand intellectually why these are impurities. Just like we're talking about. Scriptures help us understand why these things are impurities, even when the mind doesn't always accept it. Right? But as long as greed lingers in our hearts, we'll continue to see worldly objects as desirable and chase after them. And we can say, oh, I'm not greedy. I look at this, you can look at somebody who's stealing or, and you say they're greedy, but the reality is when our standard is that, only connection with divinity will really fulfill our hearts. What we want outside of that, and that doesn't really support that, can be seen as greedy, because like you don't really need it. It's excessive, right? But we think that it will make us happy. Right? So we have to use our intelligence to say no to the mind schemes, right? To say, no, I don't need to get on this super strict diet. I need to be healthy. I need to regulate my relationship with food, not so that I can be skinny, but so that it doesn't distract me from my relationship with God. And if these schemes keep reappearing, if the mind keeps playing these games with us, it's just a sign that the impurities are still lodged within us. And that's okay. Right? That's okay. The good news is that through this practice of yoga, by reconnecting with God, who's all pure, we gradually become purified. Just like an iron rod placed in a fire becomes red hot, our consciousness through contact with divinity gets purified. It's spiritual nature. Right? So as the mind begins to recognize the impure for what it is and release the desire to enjoy it, this is when we start to experience peace. And when those inner impurities are truly cleared, then the hose will become unkinked, and our consciousness can finally flow freely through it. We can begin to see life through a spiritual lens because our consciousness isn't obstructed by all of these impurities, all these falsities. Is that a word? I don't know. with falsities. The mind settles. The passion, it calms down. And then the peace comes. And we have this deeper joy, and clarity and ultimately connection to God. So when we face material problems in our lives, we have to learn to approach them with this new perspective, right? We have to stop seeking material solutions for material problems, because these will only create more material problems. Right? It's like you feel like you need more, so you get more, right? And then you need more, and then you get more, and then it's like whatever it is, or you feel like you're not skinny enough, so you make yourself sick, right? These material solutions for material problems. We have to start seeking spiritual solutions for material problems. And this can be really difficult, because the mind has a tendency to blow things completely out of proportion. Right? Have you guys ever taken like a super small issue and turned it into this massive looming disaster? Right? This is another like trick of the mind. And then it makes you feel so stressed. It makes the mind so frenzied, so crazy. Just yesterday, or it was a couple days ago now, I got this new job, right? And I like this new job, but I'm still in that place of like, trying to, show that I'm capable of what I'm doing kind of thing. And I had this super easy task. I was just like setting up a meeting for my boss. And it was a meeting with somebody in California. And I like flipped the time zones, like I said, Eastern was Pacific and Pacific was stupidest thing. But the client like emailed back and called me on it. And I still didn't realize it. And I was like, I think it's like this. Am I missing something here? He's like, yeah, you're wrong. I was like, oh my gosh, it was so embarrassing. And my boss was like CC'd on the thing. So I just was like, oh gosh, I'm trying so hard to like show that I can do this. And anyway, the whole night I was just like freaking out about it. I was like, just got this job. I'm just kind of starting to like this job. Is my boss not going to trust me anymore? What if I lose my job altogether? Just like these stupid, and it was just like this small thing. It was a nice interaction with the client. Like I was very humble, and even when I still thought I was right, I was still very humble just because I've learned my lesson in that, right? But it was like, but my mind was just nuts. Even going to bed, I'm like, husband, tell me something that will make me feel better. I'm like, tell me something that, I'm just like, it's ridiculous. It was just this small thing that I just like zoomed in on and just like blew up. I was thinking of you guys too, because we were just talking about how the mind does this. This is the mind. And what the mind will do is seek out, some kind of material solution. It'll try to compensate. It'll oftentimes, I'm that person who will like text back right away when I shouldn't. It'll like just act on impulse. The mind's nuts, right? We all know that. The mind is nuts. Right? So it wasn't until the next morning when I sat down for my spiritual practice, that I started to feel better. I started to like my perspective of things just started to broaden. I started to see my life as part of God's divine plan. It wasn't even like whatever happens, it's not even for me to control or to not. It's just like you show up, you do your best, and you accept that whatever's being shown to you is for your benefit. It's for your benefit. This revealed to me like my severe scarcity mentality. My need to like be the best, to be perfect, my perfectionist mentality. And if I'm not, then I'm like my self-worth is like plummets, right? Just like shoots down. These things, they reveal these things to us. They reveal where we're in illusion, where we're not really connected with God, where we're thinking that we're independent doers. And it's just like we were talking about the last class with Stacy and her initiation story. These things are blessings. I thought about you too, Stacy, and I thought, okay, I need to see this as a blessing. I need to see this as just like turning on the light in our mind, showing us the dirt and the clutter that we really need to deal with. And that's what this meditation does, right? It connects us with this part of ourselves that doesn't change. our indestructible spiritual core and the highest reality of Krishna. And that's why we do it, because it does this. It can broaden our perspective. We see things, we see things in the context of this eternal journey of our souls. And they're temporarily in this mind-body vehicle. And the obstacles that we go through and these little problems that we encounter, it's just to shed light on the clutter that's gunking up our hose. That's it. It's just to shed light on that kink in our hose that needs to be straightened out so that the spiritual consciousness can flow through without obstruction. And ultimately, the result of whatever it is that we think is so terrible, or could be so terrible, is also part of God's divine plan for us. And we have to trust that our plan, that our lives are in divine hands. And that's all that we can do. And learn from each thing. Learn from each thing. And the Gita teaches us this. It teaches us that the fruit of meditation is a peaceful mind. That's what this meditation will do for us. That's what this connection will do for us. And it frees us from these obsessive material thoughts that distort how we see things. They turn us into they put us in what's that mode where it's like turbo mode. You're just like crazy. They're like fanatic. Meditation, it brings us back. It brings us back to what is real. It connects us to what is eternal. It helps us feel Krishna's shelter. And that shelter, it's so powerful. It reassures us that no matter how big the outer problem seems, there's always a far bigger reality for us within. And that's why we come back. That's a reason we need to come back, to see that my life is in God's hands. Whatever happens is ultimately for my good. But I know for me, like my conditioned self, I run into these things, and that's not the first thing I'm thinking. The first thing I'm thinking is, how did I do this? I had so many opportunities. How could I be so stupid? Right? It's just like, I. So this is the daily practice. We come back to this meditation, we come back to this connection, this consistent effort, and it slowly shifts the mind and brings that peace. But the point is, the peace is not going to come naturally in this passionate, materialistic society. You can't just wear neck beads and say, okay, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. No, your mind's going to be a mess. Maybe you're one of those super lucky ones who's brought up in this super peaceful, connected upbringing and kind of away in a bubble away from the rest of the world. But even if you're impacted by culture even a little bit, you're going to have some passion in your mind. Right? And we have to make that effort, take that discipline to show up again and again, quiet the mind, still the mind, clear our super busy schedules, right? And obtain that peace. Right? We have to work for it. What is the mantra again? Did I say a mantra? My life is in God's hands. Whatever happens is ultimately for my good. Those were ones that I came back to after I made that mistake at work. Right. Yeah. Can anybody relate to this? Does anybody else blow small things completely out of proportion? And I think I used to spiral way more, way longer, and way lower. So that's the other thing too. Okay, you might spiral a little bit, but once you have Krishna in your life, you won't spiral for so long, and you won't go so low. And then hopefully each time it'll cut it off a little bit sooner. Right? To the point where it's it's not even a thing. You have a little setback and it's okay, you get it. You get it. You get what these little things are in the context of your life, your multi-life journey, right? Of your eternal soul. And it's not something to get tripped up on. Okay, so we'll go to one more verse. We'll just do one more. This last verse is going to explain how this purification and inner stillness is achieved. Okay, so this verse we've become convinced that this inner stillness is necessary, right? It's essential. Right? It's this stillness. We want to achieve this peacefulness because at this peacefulness, this is conducive to spiritual life. This is where this is what facilitates this connection to spiritual energy, right? To divinity. Okay, so the next verse we're going to talk about how this purification and inner stillness is achieved. Okay, so Stella, when you're ready, what are we at? 28?
Thus, the self-controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord.
Thank you. Okay, so beautiful, beautiful verse here. This transformation, just like we've been talking about, happens through regular, consistent practice. Right? When someone engages steadily in yoga, purifying and redirecting their consciousness, right? That's the process of yoga. They begin to perceive spiritual reality. We've all felt this, maybe you've had a glimmer like in a kirtan where you just felt so like connected and maybe time just like didn't exist. These kinds of feelings, these kinds of like, these kinds of experiences. And this soul makes contact with this all-pervading spiritual energy. And then it starts to relish the deeper truths beyond the material world. And then it's just not about like physical contact. It's about contacting God by purifying our consciousness and raising it to the spiritual level of reality. That's what we're talking about here. And from that purified state comes this ultimate happiness, the supreme joy. Because Gita wisdom teaches us that our natural, healthy state of our consciousness is to feel protected, satisfied, and loved. Right? Anybody go through life and not feel those things, right? Protected, satisfied, and loved. And if so, there's just a kink in your hose. There's a kink in your hose. You got some impurities in there, right? Because the natural state of the consciousness that's flowing freely is going to feel that protected, satisfied, and loved. Because when we're in spiritual consciousness, we realize that we're not just these temporary bodies. We're eternal souls meant to love Krishna. And because Krishna is the all-loving source of happiness, love for him naturally fills us with deep, lasting joy. Again, it's not just a fleeting high, but it's a steady sense of peace and fulfillment. And we can all think about when we felt the most protected or loved or satisfied in your life. And what helps us connect with that feeling and how we might nurture it more intentionally. And it's like we go around in life just looking for these things, just looking to feel protected, loved, satisfied. And it's available. It's available for us through connection with God. And that's not to say that it's not important in our life to have, healthy relationships. And these things are important, and these things help us to have a peaceful mind so that we can connect with God, right? If we're always feeling stressed or unsafe, it's going to be hard to kind of even create that time in our lives, physically or even mentally, the space to connect. So these things are important. But what we're saying here is that the ultimate, the safest, the most protected, the most loved, the most satisfied you felt in your life, great. But it like pales in comparison to what we can feel in connection with God. And that's what we're talking about here. And sometimes we have a tendency to get stuck in old routines, right? Like life's just repeating itself. And our solution can be to get something new, try something new, maybe a new job, a new car, a new house, maybe a new relationship, right? That's like a normal thing. Get a divorce, get a new spouse. And these things might feel exciting at first, right? But before long, the shine wears off, and that familiar sense of dissatisfaction creeps back in. And the reason that our longing for a new life never really feels satisfied, and it leaves us feeling satisfied, is because no matter how fresh or exciting something looks on the outside, it's still made of that same old stuff, matter. It's all matter. And as living souls, the kinds of emotions that we can experience from dead matter are pretty limited. And when we come into contact with something new, we might get a little burst of pleasure. I just thought of those what are those gushers? You guys ever eat those gushers? It's like, yeah, and it's like the burst of juice that comes out of those things, right? It's like you get a little bit of pleasure when you come into contact with some new exciting matter, a new spouse, a new job, a new whatever, right? But that's just from its external novelty, right? As soon as the newness fades and we really see it for what it is, we realize that there's truly nothing new after all. Right? Even like second marriages have a higher divorce rate than first marriages, right? Because it's like, it's the same thing. It just happens again. And so you get out sooner. Right? It's like these things, this is material nature. But the Gita is offering us a different solution. It's saying if we truly want a new life, we need to redirect our search for newness from the outside to the inside, from matter to Krishna. And Krishna is ever fresh, right? He's limitless, and he's right there in our own heart. And when we deepen our inner connection with him, we discover endless layers of beauty, of personality, of sweetness. And that's why this verse says that the highest happiness comes from contact with divinity, right? Because unlike material pleasures, that connection never gets old. Even the mantra itself, I think about songs that I've really loved. And I've loved some songs, like just play them over and over for like years, but never something like the Maha Mantra. I don't think I've ever said or listened to anything quite as much. And it's like it never gets old, right? It's ever fresh. Why? Because it's not material. It's spiritual. And this is the nature of spiritual. And we know the nature of material is that it will fade. It will get old. We'll get tired of it. If it even lasts that long. If you think about the last time you were excited about something new, and think how long did that excitement last? My husband and I are looking at getting a new car. My car has these problems, and we wanted to get a bigger car anyway. Our family's growing, and blah blah blah. Usually, I'm like run in. I get super excited about the first car I see. I want to buy it that day. And this time, I'm going in, and it's like I know. I feel excited about a new car, but I still know it's like it's going to get old. It's like, what's the rush to jump in? Because it's just in a few months, then it's even going to be old, and you're going to, it's like, I actually feel different. It's been, several years, 10 years maybe since I bought a car, but I actually feel different this time than I did the last time. And I've kind of been thinking about the difference in that experience. It's not even that you're not excited, because I'm still excited for a new car, but at the same time, it's like, that extra layer of like pushing, of like making it happen, of like this has to happen or I'm not going to be happy. That's not there. And that is like, it's such a relief. It's like liberating, actually, like liberation from myself and my mind's tricks. Because we know that these things ultimately don't make us happy. They don't make us happy. And even if they do, it's going to fade. But a relationship with Krishna, this stays ever fresh, no matter how much we experience it. Right? So this verse reminds us that this happiness awaits anyone who purifies their heart through consistent yoga practice. And we have to remove our impurities to feel good. We have to unkink that hose, right? Because our feelings flow from the state of our consciousness. And when our consciousness is impure, when it's attached to worldly things instead of God, it's inevitably going to drag us into bad feelings. Right? We're going to feel insecure because worldly things are beyond our control. Like my example with my job. Right? We're going to feel inadequate because our endless attachments make us crave what we don't have. And even if we get a momentary burst of happiness, it doesn't last. Sooner or later, anxiety, dissatisfaction, or fear is going to creep back in. This is material existence. You can say, oh no, my life's pretty good. No, you experience these things. You may not know it. It may be like on a subconscious level that you try to like push down, but you experience these things. And if you don't yet, you will. And you will in a big way. Because that's material existence. There's no like wishing it away. There's no like shortcut, to avoid it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. But bhakti yoga, it purifies our consciousness of these worldly attachments, right? And it redirects our heart towards God. And in that pure state, we can finally rest in the kind of happiness that doesn't get shaken by external circumstances. How nice does that sound? Right? How nice does that sound? It's like the next time something at work doesn't go your way, it's not going to like ruin your whole night. Right? Because you're connected to such a deeper, more nourishing source of happiness that it's like whatever happens there, it's not really going to shake you that much. It's like when you have a really steady home life, if you go out and somebody at the grocery store isn't the sweetest to you, it doesn't like crush you. Whereas if like you're in a position where it's like you have no love in your life and somebody's kind of crappy to you, it just brings you totally low. Right? It's like we're connected to something so much higher that these little material waves, we don't even shake us. That's what Krishna's promising us here. So these next 3 verses, this is the first one, 28. 28, they're going to talk, we're talking about progressive levels of spiritual realization. So 28, this verse, we're talking about the Brahman realization, right? Perceiving the all-pervading spiritual substance, underlining the material appearance. Okay, the next verse is Paramatma. That's awareness of God in the heart. And then ultimately Bhagavan realization. That's the personal loving relationship with Krishna himself. So that's where we're going, and that's where we are. And that's what's kind of progressing here. But in the beginning, when a yogi turns inwards, they first experience the vast, all-pervading spiritual reality. They see the oneness. They see the spirituality, the spiritual essence in everything. Right? And as they advance, their realization becomes more intimate and more personal. They see God in the heart. They understand God's in the heart of me. They understand God's in the heart of my dog, right? And in that blade of grass. Right? And this culminates in the highest happiness of loving devotion to the Supreme. So that's where we are, and that's where we're going. And that's what I have for us today. Once again, the Gita is showing us that peace and happiness aren't just about fixing the external world. In fact, that can derail our efforts. That can distract us. That can make things worse. But fix the inside first. Fix the inside first. Transform the internal world. Notice when the mind is restless, when it's caught in lust, when it's caught in anger, endless desires, when we can't see clearly, notice. Right? And purify it through this steady spiritual practice. Reel it in and purify it. Right? Through meditation, through wisdom, through devotion. And this starts to calm it down. And we want to calm it down because in that stillness, we can start to see beyond the service. Right? We see that we're not these bodies or these fleeting emotions. Right? That we're eternal souls. We're connected to Krishna. Right? And we start to see that presence in everything. And from that vision flows a deeper love, a lasting peace, a happiness that doesn't depend on anything external. And so every time the mind tries to wander, gently bring it back to Krishna. And we'll create a new impression in the mind. And each small effort makes the next one easier. And over time, like little step by step, these steps lead us towards this highest realization, right? Seeing God everywhere and feeling his presence in everything. And once we get there, it's like we have a setback at work or in our relationship or whatever. It's not shaking us. In fact, in that moment, we can show up with more compassion, more love, right? More of a beacon of hope, an instrument for God, right? Because we're so grounded and steady in that connection. So that's what this can do for us. That's what these practices can do for us. That's Krishna consciousness. So as we move through our day, maybe we pause and ask ourselves, like, where's my mind right now? Is it restless? Right? Can I gently bring it back to what's real? And just these small shifts over time will open the door to a deeper connection and to the kind of happiness that never fades. Okay, so that's all I have today. Does anybody want to share any final reflection before we go?
I just want to thank you, Radha. Just those last few minutes of you talking, it's like that's what good news is. That's like it's to use a Christian term, gospel. It's like I I felt like you were telling me such good news. I don't know. I've heard it before a million times, but sometimes when you just hear it after your whole full preparation for us to hear it, I felt like I heard it. So thank you. Thank you. I feel happiness right now, and I think it's a good happiness.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I feel the same. I feel like I heard it too. I feel like I heard it too. I feel like Krishna was speaking to me. And yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here and
Thank you.
sharing. Ryan, my friend, so good to see you.
Hey, Aiba.
Well,
Good to see you too. I was thinking of something when you were talking about the things, we sometimes want, the car or the job or the new spouse. I was thinking that my guru, he once said it in a class. He said there's actually only like 3 outcomes of the things we want in this world. You know that, right?
yeah, we have an acronym
But
for that, right?
it's the material things. Sorry?
I said we have an acronym for that. Does anybody remember the acronym when we talked about that? The FIT acronym, the 3 outcomes?
Oh, I don't know.
Futile, right? Insubstantial,
I don't know that.
temporary.
I can't.
Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
please continue.
Well, oh, okay. I can't attend every class, so I don't know
Sure.
all the things you say before.
Yeah.
No, it's well, I don't know. Somehow I remembered. It's like basically you want something, you never get it. That's outcome number 1, Then the next one is you want something, you get it, and then you lose it. Or you get it and turns out not the thing that you imagined how it is. And in the end, it's always something like that. And some things like, I don't know, even a marriage ends in one person is losing the other partner at some point because it's material. And those are the things, and the spiritual things we will never lose, or we will, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Orion.
Right.
All right, well, so good to see you. Anybody else? Shakti, are you trying to come off mute? Or are you just messing with your computer? Okay. Okay, my friends. Well, it's so good to see you all. And we'll see you on Monday. Let's just keep trying. Let's just keep trying, doing our best. Let's do our best. And I'll see you all Monday. Haribol.
Haribol.